What is going on, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG video, and today I'm joined by a very special guest coming off of his 7th Regional Championship 2010 Worlds runner-up, one of the most accomplished players in the game, 2016 European International Champion, Michael Pramawat. How's it going, man?
Doing good. Feeling pretty good about this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I would imagine so. Yeah, like I said, this 7th regional championship. Previously, coming into the weekend, you had 6, and the next closest people behind you were Israel and Ryan, who are at 5 apiece. So this separates you from the pack even further. How does that feel? Just extending the lead, as some would say.
Feels pretty good. You also have to get pretty lucky, I think. Sure. So, yeah, a good mix of both. Yeah.
Yeah. Come out on top. So run me back real quick before we get into the deck and talk about Memphis. Off the top of your head, can you go through your past regional championships and the deck you played at those? Is that too much to ask? Do you think you can?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. So I'm just going to go for most recent to the oldest.
Yeah, sounds great.
So this one was Lycanroc-Zoroark. The one before that was Night March and Expanded.
That was this season. Yeah.
Yes, and then the one before that was the last U.S. regional of last season, which was Standard Vespiquen Zoroark. So running theme there. And then before that, I had one in Houston with Toadbats.
Okay.
I got
like 2015 season.
Yeah, I got one in Virginia with Darkrai, Sableye, Garbodor.
Okay.
Back when Catcher just got errated.
Okay, so that's like 2014, right?
Yeah. And then I got another one with Guardy in 2010.
Okay, is that the same list you would have played at Worlds, or like around the same?
It was like the same archetype, but I changed a lot of the text around from then to Worlds.
Yeah.
Like I had played it. And then Mike Fouché, like I beat him in top 4, and then he took that deck to a top 8 finish at U.S. Nationals.
Okay.
And then I took what he improved on that deck to Worlds.
Okay.
So that's the deck I got second place with.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I had won a regionals with before that in North Carolina with Meganium Metagross.
Okay. So
Meganium Delta Meganium Metagross.
Is that
Delta Meganium, and then Psychic, like the energy charging Metagross.
Okay, so very similar to the Metagross we have today, then.
Yeah, but it used Delta's Meganium to like get your Pokemon out into the field.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so sounds so as you guys can see, very consistent over the years, but especially just the last 5 years here, where most of the wins have come. That I think people would consider the past 3 years or so to have the skill of general players in the game has increased dramatically since the early days of the game, and so I think that's pretty evident of your skill that you're able to come out on top in the most recent years. So yeah, just real quick, this is the 7th one, like we mentioned. So how does this win compare to your previous wins? What is the feeling post tournament? Just like what does this mean to you?
It's really cool, actually. I have the 2 largest regional wins, in terms of size. So that's really cool, and it's in different formats, which is really, really cool to have. And it's weird because I always feel like I get lucky, but then you also have to play well to get lucky in the first place. So
yeah.
There's that. But it feels really good. It's not like getting old or anything, so
yeah,
it's good.
I'm sure you'll welcome all that come to you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's great. So that leads us up to Memphis. We'll talk about the Lycanroc-Zoroark deck that you played to take down the tournament. This was, I think, the most popular archetype in Day 2 of the tournament. I believe 10 or 12 placings in Day 2, so, and the most popular in top 8 as well. So this is obviously a very, very powerful deck. But just talk us through the testing process leading up to the tournament. What led you to land on Lycanroc-Zoroark?
Sure. So initially, I actually almost lost to this deck at London EU IC. Round 9, I was playing against this deck. I was using Guardy, and like I got really like it went 1-1, and then going into game 3, I just got really lucky. I got like the fabled god tier Gardevoir setup, where it was like turn 2 Gallade Gardevoir Curlia, turn 3 Gardevoir, getting in there. Yeah. Right, and if I didn't do that, I just lost. It was just over because that deck is so aggressive. And this was before like towards innovation of puzzles with Zoroark was kind of like known. So like, you know, imagine if that deck had Puzzle of Time in it. It was just like he was probably going to 2-0 me. Yeah. So like, yeah, I was really impressed with that deck. I thought that was like my favorite deck I saw all weekend. And then I think Tord came out with like partners with Zoroark he was trying out, and before he eventually settled on Galissapod, which my roommate Ben Potter saw, and he took like a pretty suboptimal Lycanroc Zoroark deck to a League Cup and ended up winning it. And like he like posted the deck list. I looked at it and I was like, wow, this is bad, but it still won. It was so bad. The list was so bad, but still won. Showed how strong this strategy was. Sure. So we improved on it, and then Dustin won a League Cup with it. And then we improved on the list again. And then that's the list we ended up settling on.
Awesome. So you guys all played the same 60 cards or like same 59, correct?
Yeah, I mean, well, the deck wants like 65 cards.
Sure.
So like the last like 2 or 3 spots we were all kind of debating on, and we couldn't come to a consensus on 60 cards, but we came to like 58.
Okay.
As like these are the 58 slots that you have to play, and then these 2 slots we weren't really sure on. So we all just felt what we did was like what our personal preference was on those 2 cards. Okay. But, you know, given the opportunity, we would have played all the cards we wanted to play, but there's just not enough room in the deck.
Of course, yeah. So obviously Ben also finished in the top 8, and then I believe Dustin finished in top 64. So yes. The deck, the group of you guys that brought it obviously ended up doing very well at the tournament, so it shows the strength of the deck there. You want to talk about just some of those last 59th and 60th card choices and what some of the arguments were back and forth?
Yeah. So first of all, the deck wants 3 Field Blowers, but we couldn't fit it. It wants 3 Choice Bands and 2 Float Stones, but we couldn't fit those either. So I ended up compromising with 3 Choice Band, 2 Float Stone, or 1 Float Stone. Ben went 2-2. None of us went 3 Field Blower. We were like, we'll just try to get lucky against Garbodor. And then we wanted both Energy Loto and Multi-Switch, but we couldn't get both in. We were thinking about Mewtwo, but ended up not playing it. Hindsight, the preferred Buzzwall counter is Mew-EX. Okay. Because you can use Riotous Beating. Yep. But those were the slots. We also wanted like the 4th Strong, but couldn't fit that in either. So there's just a lot of cards we wanted, and some of it had to go. Yeah.
Got to make the cuts somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, speaking of the strong energies, the energy count is definitely interesting. We've got 4 DCE, which, I mean, makes sense, is pretty standard for Zoroark decks, but then 3 strong energies and 2 basic fighting energies. What led you guys to come to that as opposed to, like, a heavier fighting energy count or just having the maximum 4 strong energies? Where did you guys come to that decision?
Yeah, so you still need strong energies, like a decent amount of them for the Gardevoir matchup. Because your premier way of knocking out a Gardevoir is a Dangerous Rogue with 2 Strongs, a Kukui, and a Choice Band. And that sounds like a lot of cards you need, but with Zoroark, you just get there.
Oh, yeah.
And you can usually buy a lot of time by raiding their bench early. And so when they have 3 bench, that you just get them with Dangerous Rogue. So you still needed, and you wanted 3 because you didn't want to, like, if 1 Strong is prized, or you couldn't get the both of them at once, then you needed like a better chance of doing it. And you needed 2 basic fighting because how strong Enhanced Hammer was against this deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And for DCE, it's because it's at its heart, it's a Zoroark deck.
Of course, yeah. DCE is definitely.
It also works well with Claw Slash, which is nice.
Yep. So I do also want to ask you real quick. There are two different options for Rockruffs in this format, and you have been very adamant about this being the optimal Rockruff. Is that a discussion you guys had between which of the Rockruffs to play, and what led you to this?
I mean, so the only argument you could ever make for the corner Rockruff is, hey, my opponent used all 4 Guzmas, and hey, I can Guzma up something and corner lock it for game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this scenario only works if all 4 Guzmas are in their discard pile, if they are not running Puzzle of Time themselves, if you actually have a bigger deck than they do as a Zoroark deck, to remind you what you're playing. The card that discards cards to draw cards. So once all these factors in, sure, corner is better. But in every other scenario, promo Rockruff is better. Yeah. It also has the added perk of getting lucky against a lone Zorua.
Yeah, and also seems like it could be very useful against something like a Safeguard Hoopa, which I think...
In a Xurkitree deck, yeah.
Something you probably weren't expecting to play coming into the weekend, but it served as a Hoopa counter, I would say.
Yeah, it ended up working out well. I didn't really know what to do against that matchup. I was actually kind of sad. Yoshi, like, before I actually played that matchup, I was like, man, I don't want to have to play against this deck. This deck seems so annoying to play against. I was like, I guess I'll just go Rockruff. And then as the game was going, I was like, all right, this is a really good strategy. Let's just keep doing this.
It ended up working out. Yeah, for those who don't know, Pram did play, I believe, in round, was it round 1 of day 2, so round 10?
Yeah,
against
10, yeah.
Yehoshua Tate on stream. Yoshi is well known in the game for always bringing really wacky and crazy ideas to tournaments, and he played this Wailord-esque style deck with Hoopa that has Safeguard and Xurkitree and big basics like Celesteela. Ended up working out very well for Pram. Do you want to... I guess you already kind of talked about that matchup, but going into it, you said you were pretty nervous about it?
Yeah, he was like one of the people I didn't want to play because it was just a complete unknown to me on whether or not I could win. And it ended up being fine because, like, at the end of the day, he still has to bench Pokemon. Right. So, like game 1, I ended up doing, like, a Dangerous Rogue with a Choice Band and 2 basic Fightings for 160. It was he just had 1 bench, and it was just like... And before that, I got a tackle in, so it was 20 on a tackle for 20, turn 2, Dangerous Rogue, Choice Band, or Choice Band, Dangerous Rogue, and then that ended up being 80 times 2 is 160. So works out. And then the cool part is you can with a bunch of promo Rockruffs, you can have one Rockruff that has all your basic fighting, and then another Rockruff that has all your strong energies. So you don't, it's really nice.
You heard it here first, guys. The way to approach the Hoopa Xurkitree matchup from Michael Pramawat. So, very interesting for sure. So yeah, just talk us through, I guess, day 1 very briefly. What were some of the matchups you played? You don't have to give us like the whole tournament report. Just any games that stick out to you, players you played against that put up really good games. What was your real quick? What was your record at the end of day 2 or day 1?
My end of day record was 8-1.
8-1. So you were you the first seed going in, or was there an 801?
Third. I think I was third.
Oh yeah,
seed,
Pablo was 801. That's right.
Yes.
So what was that one loss?
It was to Andrew Mahone.
Okay.
Who was using the Buzzswall Lycanroc deck with Parallel Cities, and that deck completely counters mine. Like, if I don't run in it, because I didn't... I thought Mewtwo was underwhelming against Buzzswall if they just play correctly, so I didn't run it, because I was like, whatever, I'll just lose. It's fine. Sure. Yeah. And then, I just lost. It was just destruction.
Yeah, it seems hard with
I ended up pulling one game but like the way you have to win is just like end game, end them the 1 after knocking out like auxiliaries, and then sending up a Tapu Lele and hoping they don't have Regirock or doing some kind of Claw Slash shenanigans. So it's like
it's just hard.
It's very hard. Yeah, and then but in terms of games that were interesting, or at least decks that were interesting, I had a fun game against the Pissimian deck in round 5.
Okay.
where I just knocked out Remoraid like 6 times in the match.
Oh, that was on stream as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was on stream.
Okay.
I had some close series versus Golisopod, Zoroark, but I ended up winning 2-1 against both of them. And then I ended up going undefeated against Mirror Match. I played like 3 mirrors in day 1.
Okay.
Something like that.
Do you want to speak about the Golisopod Zoroark matchup real quick? It seems like one that on paper can be kind of interesting because you hit them for weakness, but then in turn they also hit your thing that hits them for weakness. So it seems like it just can be kind of odd.
Yeah, so basically your whole game's plan is to run them out of Golisopods or Wimpods, hopefully.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is like if you go first, you're going like turn 2, right is beating on a Wimpod. And if they were using Towards list, they only run 3-2. And most people don't really deviate from that type of list.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the correct number is 4-3. A lot of the techs that Tord ran are unnecessary for the current meta. I'm sure they were good. I'm sure they were good in London, but as of right now, they don't really do much. And then, you just go after the Wimpods, and then you can deal with 1 Golisopod with a Dangerous Rogue. So you can, if you get your Dangerous Rogue, and then they don't have a Golisopod, your Lycanroc just wins the game.
Okay.
So a matchup is as like towards London list versus this list, it's probably like 65-35 Lycanroc, just because of how aggressive you are to how passive they are.
Sure.
Like they have to use a supporter to go after your Lycanroc, and you're just like bring it up, and yeah.
Okay, makes sense. I guess I do one other thing I wanted to talk about briefly was like this deck is obviously very powerful as a strategy, but to me it seems that it's also the type of deck where there's a lot of even to slightly favorables to slightly unfavorables across the board, and when it comes to past best deck in formats, it seems like that's very similar like across the board through the history of the game. Like we even saw with this past year in Daytona, we saw Necrozma Garbiter be very popular, but it also just took 50-50s everywhere. And last year in Expanded, Eviltal Maxis seemed like a deck that had 50-50s, slightly favorables, but just in the hands of a strong player comes out on top. Is that something you've seen consistent throughout the history of the game?
Yeah, I definitely think this, and this deck is actually not that easy to play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are a lot of like micro decisions you have to make, like with trade. Like sometimes trade's real easy, and you're like, I'll discard Brigette.
Yeah.
But like, most of the time, it's like I'll discard this card, and I know I'm not going to need it later. And I mean, like, ask anyone who played this deck, I'm sure like maybe 20% of the time they discarded the wrong card.
Yeah,
and myself included.
Yeah.
So it's like.
Yeah, I can imagine there's times where you discard something and then your opponent ends you and you're like, oh man, I wish that card was still in my deck.
Yeah, it's like they didn't predict the game far enough down.
Mm-hmm.
So because all your cards are good, so it's not like you're discarding bad cards all the time. So maybe like 20% of the time it was like the wrong discard.
So, obviously you guys played a couple copies of Professor Kukui, which can help you hit numbers. Do you want to just briefly talk about a couple of the relevant numbers that Kukui was really necessary for in the deck?
Sure. There's two big... The one big one is it lets Zoroark knock out Tapu Lele. Mm-hmm. So everyone plays Tapu Lele. Zoroark maxes out at 120 base. So with a Choice Band and a Kukui, you bump it up by 50 to 170. And because you're running a Lycanroc deck, you can Bloodthirsty Eyes the Kukui the Tapu Lele from the bench, play Kukui, do 170 with Zoroark, and it's really good.
Yeah.
The second one where it's good, you have to have Kukui, is Gardevoir, because they're gonna be playing around 3 bench the entire game, and you're gonna need to use Dangerous Rogue-GX, and the only way you're gonna get 240 is 2 Strongs, a Choice Band, and a Kukui. No other way. So you have to have the Kukui in that matchup as well. Also good versus Gliscopod, because then you don't need two strongs. You can do one strong, because if they also have three bench again, it's like the three bench is the theme. You want to be able to reach numbers with three bench, and it's also coincidentally good versus Wishy Washy and Celesteela,
yeah,
where you get the 220 with your triple strong Claw Slash with a choice band.
Very
so,
nice.
Yeah.
So there's some relevant numbers there for you guys. I guess I should ask, you talked a lot about Dangerous Rogue right there. Did you find a lot of people, once they saw you bench Rockruffs, really trying actively to play around Dangerous Rogue, or were people just kind of bench happy and just filled their stuff up anyway?
It's a mixed bag. There were people who were trying to play around it like really hard, and then...
Because sometimes it's like you play around it, but then that also just hurts you way too much because you were trying to play around it too much.
So I mean, that you can do that, and I probably got a few wins that way, I'm sure, where their bench was just weak, and I'd just be like, all right, Zoroark, get in there. All right, so I'm sure it worked out both ways. I think it's just a hard attack to play around, to be honest. Like, like bench management is a skill that is pretty hard to get really good at, and then you have to also read the situation where you just don't care about Dangerous Rogue. You're like, whatever, you're just gonna knock me out. It's fine.
Just accept it.
Yeah, you just accept it because and so like if you can't do both, but manage your bench and then knowing when to accept the Dangerous Rogue, then you just get bopped by it pretty hard.
I do want to ask you about a couple of omissions here. There's no... you decided not to play the baby Zoroark, the breakthrough Zoroark with stand-in. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah. So in my testing, it actually was just super underwhelming, right? Everyone would come up with these like dream scenarios where you're like, oh, if they're full bench, and then you get like 160 and a Kukui and a choice band, you can just do 210, and I'm like, bruh. First off, they have to be full bench. Second off, it doesn't use trade, so like if you ever needed the trade, you can't use that one. Yeah. And then even if you get it, you're also committing energy onto something that's getting one shot right away. So what ended up happening, and to make it worse, because they're playing around Mindjack and Dangerous Rogue, their bench is already low. So like
Mindjack's not doing too much for you.
Yeah, Mindjack was like 100 damage most of the time. And it's like, this is just worse than Riot is beating in every way. And I don't even get to draw cards off this guy. So we ended up cutting it because it was just super underwhelming against like proper play.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
for sure. And then I also want to ask you really quickly about the Energy Loto slot. That seems like the slot that was the 60th card for your group of people that played. I think Ben did play the multi-switch. So what made you decide Energy Loto over multi-switch, or was there something else that you considered cutting for multi-switch?
No, I mean, those were the two slots. Those were the two card options for that slot. So it's really just early game versus late game. Energy Loto will hopefully get you that energy so you can get the turn 1 attachment. Multi-switch will get you the late game, like maybe victory, if by like a cheeky like... Oh, and by the way, if you are running multi-switch, you should be running 2 Float Stone. Okay. Just because you need the movement, because it only goes from bench to active. So right, you need the movement to go with it. So if you run the Energy Loto, you can get that basic fighting down more often on turn 1. You can get like the turn 1 energy drive more often, things like that. And like you can get like say you have a hand of DCEs, like mid game you can go trade. You didn't hit that fighting energy or strong, and then Energy Loto to dig 7 cards even deeper, and then get you that fighting energy you need. Okay. Multi-switch is like, I have a Zoroark active. Surprise, Dangerous Rogue. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, both cards are very good. It's just, I don't know, it's 60 card limit.
Yeah. No, it seems like it did work out for you. Do you find yourself...
Yeah, it worked out for Ben too, so,
yeah.
You know.
So both methods are definitely solid for sure. I also want to ask you really quickly about the Mallow. There is just the one copy in here. Obviously, really good synergy with that trade ability, allowing you to just get any 2 cards at any point in the game. Was that extremely useful? Do you still would you still play Mallow in the deck if you played it again tomorrow?
Yes. What it does, especially in this, I think it's even better in Lycanroc than it is in Golisopod, because with this deck you can go okay, say I want to go after a bench Remoraid, for example. You can be, and you don't have any energy in your hand. You can be but you have a Zoroark active. Mallow for DCE Lycanroc. Trade. Lycanroc DCE knockout.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you have a lot of non-supporter power cards, like Lycanroc, like Choice Bands, Puzzle of Times, you definitely want Mallow in the deck. But it's slow. So you have to have it as a one-of, especially because you have Tapu Lele.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there are definitely a lot of really cool plays. And it also makes a lot of sense with Puzzle of Time. If you have one piece in your hand, you just Mallow, guarantee the second one, anything else.
Yeah, and there are times where you're they have 2 special energies in play, and you have a puzzle in your hand. So you're Mallow, puzzle, Enhanced Hammer, draw 2, Enhanced Hammer, puzzle, Enhanced Hammer.
Yeah. Definitely seems, so a lot of options there. Mallow definitely letting you just kind of gain control of your opponent's side of the board, so it seems pretty powerful. Last thing I want to talk about with the deck specifically, you guys chose not to use any stadiums. Were there stadiums you were considering for the deck, or did you just deem from the beginning that it wasn't really necessary?
It really wasn't necessary. If anything, you would just run more Field Blowers.
Yeah, because I guess the main thing is just having something to answer Parallel City, and Field Blower.
Yeah, if you're trying to play Parallel City and Mirror Match, it's just play more basic fightings, get the fighting down, play more if you play a third basic fighting, and then then you definitely want multi-switch. But yeah.
Okay.
Just play more Field Blowers.
Seems good. Yeah. So we talked about day 1. We've talked about the deck. Walk us through day 2. We talked about round 10 already, going up against the Wishy-Washy deck. But yeah, just walk us through the rest of the day. At what point did you feel kind of comfortable heading into top 8? Were there any points that things got really scary for you? Feel free, go ahead.
Yeah. So the Swiss rounds went pretty as expected. I lost to Pablo. Then I got a draw, and then I played Ben, and then I ended up making top 8 at 34 points. And in top 8 I played Rahul, and this was actually the worst match I played in terms of how bad I played all tournament. Probably based on how I was playing, I should have lost, but I ended up getting pretty lucky to bounce back. And there was this one turn where I had Mallow and Acerola, and they were both next to each other, and I knew I wanted to play Mallow, but I grabbed the Acerola, slammed it down, and almost picked up my deck. And I was like, oh geez. So I had the Acerola, so I was like, fine, I'll Acerola. Trade. It was the 2 cards I was going to Mallow for anyways.
Oh man. So
it was just better.
That is so funny.
So I was like, okay. Time's lucky.
It works out.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then I played Pablo in top 4.
And you said that was a matchup you were really scared of, the Buzzwell matchup.
The one thing that this deck is really good at is smelling blood in the water. So Pablo just I knew Pablo just had a dead hand after an N, and I was like, all right, this is our moment. Taking advantage. So I won game 1, and I just took over that, and I just won game 1. Yeah. And then game 2, I got annihilated, and then game 3, kind of not as bad as game 1 where he was bleeding out, but I saw a path for victory, and then he even though there are choices he could have made to counter what I was doing, he would have also had to think about what I wanted to do on the spot without seeing my hand or anything like that. So it's he played well. It's just
yeah. I remember we were actually in the car on the way back and we were watching it on our phones, the top 8 and the top 4 in finals. And I remember seeing game 3, and Pablo, I believe, had like 4 or 5 energy in his opening hand. So I think he just had a really slow start. And this is a deck that can always capitalize on your opponent's slow starts, it seems.
Yeah, if they ever like stumble. And that's kind of like why I just got dominated by Mahone so much, is like he just never stumbled. So I just got like destroyed. He beat me in day 2 as well. I had 3 losses at this tournament. It was the Pablo and twice the Mahone.
Okay.
So.
And that's pretty good if you your only losses were to 2 other people that made top 4. So
yeah,
works out. So yeah, heading into the finals, you see you're going up against Azul playing the Golisopod Garbiter deck. I think something that was not really on people's radar coming into the weekend, and playing the 4 Enhanced Hammer specifically to counter your deck. And I know that just last week, or a few weekends ago, I should say, you lost to Azul in top 4 at San Jose. So it seems like you guys kind of have this like little rivalry going on here. You want to speak to that any at all?
Yeah, I mean it's like a friendly rivalry.
Sure.
Yeah, the matchup, like in San Jose, we played 60 card mirror. Because the Zorua doesn't matter. I couldn't get like paralyzing gaze Zorua, so I was just spraying Shining Legends ones. I was like, whatever. I mean, like it didn't for back then. The only time it mattered was for Azul when he was like up against a Toad deck, but like
and he had to paralyze.
Yeah, he had to paralyze it. But for me, it was just like didn't matter. Yeah, but so yeah, I was looking to at least even up the win-loss record.
Sure.
So. The matchup is pretty close, but I think I'm favored.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. It might be just 50-50. What ended up happening was because it's still Garbodor or Golisopod, it's still inherently clunky at some points.
Yep.
So like if you just let them go up on prizes and then you catch them with an N, and then you catch them with a 2-card N, and they don't have their Sycamore because under Garbodor they can't use Tapu Lele, so it's like they have to naturally have it. And then you're also hitting them, so they have to have, they are either going to draw cards or they're going to play Acerola.
Yep.
And so if they play Acerola, then they're not drawing cards, in which case you can maneuver around that. And if you ever draw your Field Blower, then you're really getting going. And it's like playing against the Zoroark Golisopod deck, but without they're just trying to slow you down, and you don't have to worry about their Zoroarks ever. So you just have to exclusively go after Wimpods.
Yep.
And that's what happened for game 1. I got to go after him, and then game 2 I got destroyed because he just ended me, and then I didn't have any ways to get out of Garbodor.
Yeah.
In game 3, I was able to Field Blower combo him until we got to a board state where he was forced to put a choice ban on Garbodor to keep the Garbotoxin, because if he doesn't play Garbotoxin down, he just loses, because Trade is such a powerful ability, and then I get access to Bloodthirsty Eyes, things like that. So he had to put the choice ban there, and then he was I got him to a point where he had to dig for the DCE to get his Golisopod out of the active spot, or else he would just lose the game. So he had to play an N for 5, putting him at 3 cards left in his deck. And then at that point, even if he had DCE and Guzma, I win the game, because he had 4 N's in his discard and 3 Guzmas, and he would deck before he could win.
Yep. So very smart play for sure.
Yeah.
And it did turn out, I believe, his Guzma and his DCE were in his last 3 prizes, but I don't, like you said, you had covered for that anyway, so even if he had access to them, you'd have been able to achieve the deck out.
Yeah, he was 1 turn, he would have been 1 turn too slow for deck out.
So at what point through the game, because if I remember correctly, you really weren't drawing very well in that game, and he was getting pretty set up, going aggressive, and at what point did you realize, okay, I'm really behind, I need to kind of change my strategy here to win this one?
I thought it was really on the last couple turns, because I was always setting up ways where I could just win the game naturally. But then it was like he played a Sycamore, and then he had like 5 cards left in his deck, but then like 3 in hand, 3 or 4 in hand.
And that's when you needed him to play the
and
game.
that's when I decided to leave the Zoroark active. It was damaged by first impression. Then to put it into a knockout range. So his options were to like play if he had Acerola, that would have been the best scenario for him, but like he didn't, so he had to play the end to get the his last DCE out of his deck. The other one was prize, but his third DCE out of his deck. So he did actually have a DCE to retreat the Garbodor with. It's just I had another Guzma and he didn't have the Guzma.
Yep.
But either way, he had to play the end, put himself to 3, and at that point I knew I could win by deck out, even if he runs away.
Yeah. So, yeah, all that to make you the 7-time regional champion. Huge congrats once again, man. It's such a cool accomplishment. I do got to ask you, this came up on Facebook this week. People had a little debate going about who people should consider as the new greatest of all time Pokemon player. I think for as long as I can remember, it's always been Jason Klaczynski. 3-time world champion, regional champion, national champion. He's won at every level of the game practically. And now you're up there in the discussion. 7-time regional champion, 2nd place at Worlds, international champion. Do you want to take a second and make a claim for yourself here as the greatest of all time?
Yeah, I mean, Jason's obviously very good. So I mean, I don't think anyone's debating like whether we're bad or not. But
yeah,
it's pretty subjective, I think, on who's better, because like if we're talking like in game, like in like strategy and things like that, I put us pretty even.
Okay.
So I never thought I was like worse than Jason or anything, but yeah, it's hard to get past the glamour of 3 world championships.
For sure.
And like it's like how many regional wins does 1 world championship equal? Like no one even knows, right? It's like how many of these like regional. Yeah, how many regional trophies do I have to like turn in for like the equivalent of like 1 World's trophy? It's hard to say because it's clearly not 2.
Because that would put you ahead. Then yeah.
So maybe if I win 2 more regionals,
yeah,
like maybe it's 3.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, winning 3 Worlds is super impressive, and honestly, he's probably still in the lead. Just because he's won everything under the sun. I've gotten 2nd in everything under the sun. So.
Well, like you said, nobody here is going to be questioning either of your skill level. You guys are still 2 of the greatest that the game has ever seen, and I'm sure that is not going to change anytime soon. So. Thank you so much for coming on. I do got to ask, I guess, before we close this out, obviously the deck worked out for you, but looking back, are there any changes you would make if you were to sign up for the tournament again tomorrow?
Yeah, I would have added in a Mew EX.
Okay.
I don't know what I would cut. And this is the problem with the deck.
Yeah.
So like before I had like 65 cards. I'm like at 66 now, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure I would figure out something because of how much more popular Buzzwall Lycanroc was to what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was like an okay deck, but like I didn't think it was that great, and I thought it would just like kind of fall by the wayside by like round 5. But then Pablo and Mahone were just there crushing, and I was like, I don't got anything, man. I just gotta get lucky. So.
Well,
yeah.
Sometimes that's what it takes. The old adage of "I'd rather be lucky than good," and sometimes it works out. So
yeah,
and it works really well whenever you're both lucky and good, which I think was the case here this weekend. So
yeah, I think Kyle at one point Sukovic was like at one point he's like, it's almost unfair. He can't be this good and then get lucky. So yeah. Feels good sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on, taking time to sit down with me, talk over the deck. I'm going to give you a second here. The floor is yours. If you want to do any shout-outs, any plugs for your social medias, anything like that, feel free. Go ahead.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Michael Pramawat. I do a lot of updates when I'm at tournaments there. I kind of meme sometimes on there too. And then, shout out to ARG for doing the team, sponsoring me, doing the team stage. That was really cool. Shout out to Jimmy Ballard for putting the event together. Shout out to Ben and Dustin for helping me with the list. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If I missed anyone, sorry. But shout out to you guys too. And you know, if you see me on an event, feel free to say hi. It's always cool to see you guys.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, like I said, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time and talking through us. Guys, you can definitely be sure to check out all that stuff Michael was talking about. I'll leave a link to his Twitter and everything in the description. Be sure to drop him a follow over there. You can follow me as well at TrainerChip, and you can also find me on Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, all those things at TrainerChip. Thanks again, Michael, and I'm going to get out of here. And until next time, guys, take care.